coming back. That's fine. This is going to be an interesting class. Bearing in mind what we did this morning. This morning's stuff was very much on thinking and mental modes. What I also want to cover, resilience is about thinking as well, by the way. But I'm also going to cover the emotional aspects because some of that came up this morning with breaking bad news, etc. So I've slightly shifted the emphasis of where I'm going to go this evening. All right. However, you can't really deal with resilience without talking a little bit about how you think. Okay? So, let's get started here to begin with. Part of resilience as well, by the way, is all to do with optimism and mindset. One of the competencies of being resilient is that you actually have what we call realistic optimism. And why is this important in medicine? Well, again, I will just say there's far too many cases of litigation. The stress levels have never ever been as high as they ever have been in medicine, and particularly in India. So I think that resilience is becoming a very, very important skill for everybody that works in medicine, whether you be a doctor, a nurse, or even a healthcare professional. So, are you optimistic? Have you got a personality that sees the opportunity as opposed to the threat? Are you a person that sees the good thing, or are you a person that sees the bad thing? Because one of the things about being resilient is that you think of things in a particular way. And as I said, realistic optimism is part of resilience. So let's see whether or not you think you're an optimist. All right? And just explain this little bit about anticipation. Let's do this little exercise with you. Imagine getting a kiss from your favourite celebrity. How much would you pay to get it immediately? How much would you pay if you were going to get it in one day? What about 3 days? What about if you weren't going to get it for a year? And what about if you weren't going to get it for 10 years? This was an experiment that was done on a group of students. And they asked them for the amounts of money that they would pay to give their favourite celebrity a kiss. And the interesting thing about this was most students were willing to pay extra when they had to wait 3 days. They would pay less when they were getting it instantly. And this tells you something about this whole anticipation thing. And one of the things that I think about building in resilience into your everyday life, what are you looking forward to? Because there's an experiment that shows that you're happier, you'll pay more when you have to wait for things. What is it that you're looking forward to? What are you anticipating? Because anticipation makes you happy, as long as it's a positive event, not a negative event. So that's one of the things by the way, in my own life, that I absolutely make sure from 1 month to the next month there is something to look forward to. I know that in January I'm off on holidays. Before that there's Christmas. Before that there's a couple of parties. All right, so it's what are the things that you look forward to in life? And when I go home, what am I looking forward to? That type of thing. You got to make sure you've got positive stuff going on, because life can get very tough if you've got all of the negative stuff in work and all of the negative stuff at home. You got to try and build in some stuff into your life that helps you get through the day, because everybody has stress. The only differentiator is how we deal with it. Most students were willing to pay the extra to wait the 3 days, all because of the anticipation. Anticipation makes you happy. Now, let me ask you to take a look at this picture. And we're going a different way in terms of mental models. What I want you to do is look at that polar bear and write down whether or not you think that polar bear is an optimist or a pessimist, and why. By the way, can we ask the people at the back to come up a wee bit, come on up further, so that I don't have to shout so much? Because sometimes the mic goes on and off. Rather than do this individually, okay? Can you do it as a group? You do it as a group, okay? So are you all saying optimist? Optimist, optimist? What are you saying, ladies? Optimist? What are you saying? Oh, everybody's on the optimist, optimist, optimist. Why? He's trying to survive, so that's why he's an optimist. What's your reason? Still holding on. Everybody agree that's the reason, or everybody's thinking that's the same one? That's very interesting. So as far as you're concerned, optimism is survival and holding on. Well, that polar bear is not an optimist. That polar bear is an optimist. Do you want to know why? This polar bear has stayed stuck on the piece of ice. He has missed global warming coming, and he's done nothing about it. When that melts, he's in the water, whether he likes it or not. Pessimists stay with the problem. Optimists go look for a solution. This polar bear went off and got himself a boat. He's going to need it when global warming comes. Now, I know it's only a bit of fun, but the key difference here is, do you continuously think about the problem, or can you mentally shift your mindset and think about the solution? How many times or how many moments in the day do you think about problems? And how many moments in the day do you think about solutions? Another thing I'd ask you, this again is where your thinking changes everything. How many moments in the day do you think about all of the things that you cannot control versus all of the things that you can control? Now, one of the most difficult things that you have to deal with is the surge of patients that comes through this building, the numbers that you have to see. Now, unfortunately, right now, and probably for the foreseeable future, and this is a system issue, there is nothing you can do about that. All you can do is control the piece where you have to meet each patient and deal with them in the moment. That's what I'm talking about here. That takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of mental discipline, and the resilient person will stay very focused on what they can control, not on what they cannot control. And that's a very, very important distinction. The number of times that I have been in conversation with people and they've been talking about something that they can do nothing about. Now, I'll give you a scenario, and somebody shared this with me, and I know I'm going to share it, but I'm not going to say who it was. A patient dies. You think you could have done something different. To a certain extent, you might want to talk to the team and reflect about why that happened and what would you have done different. But once that's over and done and you've taken the learning from it, there is no point in thinking about that anymore, because there's nothing you can do to bring that person back. What's more important now is that you shift your attention into the present, what you've got to deal with now, and what you're going to do in the future. Some of us have this mindset where we want to hold on to stuff. And what it's a condition mentally they call rumination, where you play it over and over in your mind, and you put yourself into a state where you're almost unable to deal with it, and your emotions kick in. That is not resilience. That's the opposite. Okay, so be very, very careful about that. Optimists don't tend to do that, because optimists tend to think about solutions, not problems. Now, have everybody got a little pen and a piece of paper? You're going to need pen and paper in this. I'm going to make you work, make you think. What I'd like you to do, I'm going to put up a series of words on the slide. I want you to fill in the blank. So fill in the word. The first word that comes into your head, write it down. The very first word that comes into your head, you have to put a letter in there and create a word. Write down the first word that comes into your head. Don't tell. No, don't tell. Just write it down. Don't tell. One letter. All you do is add a letter here, and you make a word. But it's the first word that comes into your head. I only want one. Okay? Everybody ready? I'm going to put up the next one. First word that comes into your head, write it down. Okay, next one. I'm only interested in the first word. I don't care how many others follow in your mind, just the first one. So no cheating. Write down the first one. Let's go with the next one. Fill in the blank. And the next one. Next one. And the last one. Okay? We all done? Right, let's go back to the beginning. If you wrote down, D-O-W-N, you get no point. If you wrote down town, T-O-W-N, you get a point. So give yourself a point if you wrote down town. Give yourself a point if you wrote down gown, G-O-W-N. Okay? Next one. What did you write? Sewn, that's okay, you can get a point. All right? Anybody write down anything different? Town, you get a point. T-O-W-N. Okay? This one. If you wrote down bad, B-A-D, no point. If you wrote down bid, B-I-D, you get a point. If you wrote down bed, I am not giving you a point because it is not appropriate that you're thinking about your bed in the middle of this training session. So you're not getting a point. All right? You're supposed to be awake. Okay? If you also wrote down bud, B-U-D, as in the bud of a flower, you get a point. Okay? Next one. If you wrote down dark, D-A-R-K, no point. If you wrote down park, you get a point. Mark, the name of a person? Bark? Oh, one mark. Mark, that's okay, you get a point. Bark of the tree, you get a point. Okay, so no point just for the dark. All right? Next one. And lark, you get a point as well. Sins, S-I-N-S, no point. Sans is okay, you get a point, and so too is sons, S-O-N-S. Okay? Sons, you get a point. Next one. Lost, L-O-S-T, no point. Last, L-A-S-T, no point. List, L-I-S-T, you get a point. Lust, L-U-S-T, you lose 2 points. It is also not appropriate. You do lose 2 points. So if you wrote down lust, behave yourself. And if you wrote down lust and bed, take a walk. Okay? We're not having that. All right? If you wrote down hell, H-E-L-L, no point. Hall, H-A-L-L, you get a point. Hill, H-I-L-L, you get a point. Okay? Last one. If you wrote down hate, H-A-T-E, no point. Late, no point. Date, D-A-T-E, you get a point. Mate, all right, well, give me the letter. M-A-T-E, mate, you get a point. Fate, now here's an interesting one. If you think your fate is positive, you get a point. If you think your fate is negative, you don't get a point. So it depends what way you think about your fate. If you think you're destined for great things, you get a point. If you think you're destined for misfortune, no point. Okay? Everybody done? Now, count up your number of points out of 6, because technically there was only really 1 point for each one, so there's 6 words there. 7? Was there 7? All right, okay, 7, that's interesting. Who scored 7? Okay, who scored 6? Right.
the people that scored 6, you're definitely optimists. Okay, because your focus is you see things positively. Who scored 5? Okay, you're okay, but tiny little bit of work to do. All right. Who scored 4? Right, you're definitely fence sitters. You're starting to slide now. Who scored 3 and below? You need to do some work. You're all pessimists. You see the negative. Now, this is really, really important, because in resilience, if you're looking for the negative, you will see it. It's how you see the world. So you need to be very, very careful how you frame things. And this is really, really important in medicine, because if someone's got cancer and you are a person who sees the negative, you might in conversation say to them, well, 89% of people don't recover from this. The alternative way of saying that is that 19% of people do. See how it changes the whole view of the world? And how you transfer information is extremely important. So it's not 19, it's 11%, I can't count. It's for 89% and 11% make 100, isn't that right? Right. So, do you see what I'm saying? If you're a pessimist, you're likely to say 89% of people who've had this disease do not recover. Certainly a doctor in England would say that more abruptly than maybe a doctor in India. But if you're an optimist, you'll say, look, statistics show us that 11% of people actually recover from this. So what makes you feel better? The 11% that recover or the 89 that don't? Now, it is both sides of the fence. Okay, the statistics is higher for not recovering, but it still sounds better to say 11% of people make it. So you need to start thinking about what way you see the world, because it also affects how you talk. And that's very important when you're conveying information to patients. Okay? It's very, very important when you're trying to be realistic as well. So resilience for a doctor is not negotiable. It's also extremely important in leadership now, and here's why. Because whether we like it or not, we've got globalization going on, we've got a weak economy in some parts of the world, and decisions on people employment constantly. Leaders of these constant stresses every day. This hospital has stresses every day. Adapting, responding, and balancing your life has started to become very difficult, the hours that you work. Pressures of cost reduction, performance, daily struggles, increased expectations, numbers, accountabilities, collaborations. The speed of the world at the moment is causing a lot of stress. The speed of information at the moment is causing a lot of stress. The speed of change at the moment is causing massive stress. And then add into that the numbers that you have to take through here every day, and all of a sudden you have a pressure cooker going. So you can't say that there's not one single doctor or nurse in this hospital that doesn't undergo stress every single day of their life. So this has become the norm, that you have to be able to deal with this, and resilience is the only way. Now, what is the definition of resilience? It's got 2 parts to it. The definition of resilience is being in problem-solving mode for as long as possible and as long as necessary. Now, that's important, and that's why the optimism is important, because optimists see solutions. So you are in problem-solving mode, not problem mode. And the second aspect of resilience is that you can clearly see and you're clearly aware, I can control this, I can't control this, so therefore I'm going to focus on this. Stephen Covey, a very important thought leader, wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in that book, there's a chapter which says circles of concern and circles of influence. When you focus on the circle of concern versus influence, when you focus on concern, you are focusing on all of the things that you cannot control. And when you're thinking about all of the things that you cannot control, you are shrinking your circle of influence. And over time, you actually weaken your own ability to be responsible. Over time, you become ineffective because you keep thinking about the things you can't do anything about. The opposite is to focus on the circle of influence. And when your focus and attention goes on to the things that you can control, then your circle of influence grows and your circle of concern shrinks. One of the things that's really, really important here is how you describe problems to yourself. I've met so many people, and sometimes I suffer from this myself, they almost have what I would call emotional Tourette's. And they exaggerate problems. It's a huge problem. One of the things you need to start paying attention to is the size of the problem. Because the problem that you will have today, it won't be the same size in 2 or 3 days' time. Sometimes all we have to do is wait, and the problem will change. Or in the moment, we can change. If we change how we represent the problem can change, making it smaller. Okay, so one of the main skills in resilience is what I call perspective taking. Seeing the bigger picture, seeing what's important, what's not important, not putting all of your attention on one little piece that doesn't make that big a difference. So focus is huge in resilience, absolutely huge. Okay? And this is about the control piece. So what does resilience actually look like? If you were measuring resilience in an individual, the first thing you're going to look at is, did that person overcome childhood obstacles? Doesn't really matter what sort of a background you've had, whether it be chronically poor or adversarial, or you've lost a parent early on in your life. But a person who's able to overcome childhood obstacles, they're resilient. Okay? The next thing that resilient looks like is those people that can steer through day-to-day adversity. Sometimes you see people that are hugely disabled, they're in wheelchairs or they're blind, and still they have good lives because they have learned to deal with it. Those people are resilient. Okay? The third thing, something can happen to you in your life. I mean, probably one of the reasons why I teach resilience is because, I've gone through major illness. I've gone through a divorce. I've lost my father when I was 21 years of age. They talk about the 5 Ds, and death is one of them, divorce is one of them, disgrace. I don't know if I've ever been really disgraced. Maybe I should have been disgraced because I got divorced. I don't know, but I wasn't. I'm English or Irish, and disease. So sometimes life changes you anyway, but how do you bounce back from that? I remember when I had the tumour, I had the operation very, very clearly. It was diagnosed in the September of 1999, had the operation on the 2nd of November and returned to work on the 15th of December. It was an 8-hour operation. Whenever I went back to work, I remember my boss saying to me, "What are you doing in here? Most people have what you had wouldn't be back for 6 months." I was back in 6 weeks. And I just thought, I just want to get back with work. I just want to get back to doing what I need to do. Now, I probably went back a little bit early, but I did it. So how quickly do you bounce back from trauma? That's a measure of resilience. The other thing, the first 3, by the way, are mainly survival. The last one is a different mindset. How many times do you make and reach out to opportunity? Are you a person that's constantly looking for opportunities, or are you just getting by every day? Because a measure of resilience is that person that reaches out and makes opportunities. So that's what resilience looks like. That's what they call the 4 phases. Overcoming childhood obstacles, steering through day-to-day adversity, bouncing back from trauma, and reaching out to opportunity. Now, if you want to measure resilience, I'll come to that in a moment. There are 7 things we're looking for, and I'll tell you what they are in a moment. But resilience really is about having a greater awareness of how you think. Not just that model this morning, but thinking about where you put your attention. Okay? It's also definitely very much affected by the beliefs that we hold. Do you think that everything's going to be okay? Do you think when things happen, they happen for a reason? What are the beliefs that steady you the whole way through your life. I always think in the midst of difficulty lies opportunity. So every time I'm faced with a difficulty, I immediately switch to, right, there's some sort of an opportunity here. I'm supposed to learn something. I wonder what it is. As opposed to focusing on the difficulty. What am I supposed to be learning here? Somebody up there is teaching me a lesson. But that was one of Einstein's lines. In the midst of difficulty lies opportunity. And the other thing that's very, very important for people who are resilient, they're very flexible in their thinking. They do not stay fixed on the problem. They think, okay, this is the problem. Right now, what are my options? What might be the solution? They can quickly move through to the next pieces. Pessimists don't do that. Pessimists stay on the piece of ice. They stay with the problem, hoping it will go away. It isn't going to go away. You mentally can fix it. So resilience is all about developing greater flexibility in your thinking and opening your mind so that you can generate solutions to problems. This is a very famous prayer. You'll have seen it before, and I personally would keep it on my wall if you're going through difficult times. The serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, it's about focus, and the wisdom to know the difference. The tricky part is knowing the difference. Catching yourself when you're moaning. Catching yourself when you're thinking about all the things that could go wrong. Sometimes it's very useful when you're standing beside somebody and think, well, what about all the things that could go right? And they just get you into a different place. The trick of resilience is, can you get yourself into that place? And not only do you keep yourself in that place, but you also start to impact everybody else on the team. So now everybody else gets themselves into that place. Makes it very, very different working environment. As I say, the challenge is knowing the difference between what we can change and what we cannot, and that's the focus piece. This is where the quality of your thinking is everything. And I think this is massive for doctors, massive for nurses. And it's all about how you use this thing. And you know this, the brain. I told you this morning, and I'll say it again, it is the smartest weapon that you carry around with you, not the phone, your brain. And most of us don't use it the way we should be using it. So here are the 7 things. If you want to be measured for resilience, here are the 7 competencies that will indicate if you're resilient. The first one is, how good are you at regulating your emotions? Emotion regulation is a measure of resilience. Okay? The second one is impulse control. How good are you at managing your emotions in terms of impulses? Now let me give an example of this. Does everybody in this room have a credit card? Anybody have a credit card? Okay, everybody in this room has a credit card. Right, I'm going to ask you a little question here. Okay? I want you to answer the first one, but I don't want you to answer the second one. Put your hand up if you have a credit card. Just put your hand in the air if you have a credit card. Okay, most people have. Okay, don't answer this question. I want you to think about this one. Do you clear your credit card, the balance on it, in full every month? Don't answer the question. Because if you do, then you don't have any problems with impulse control. But if you don't, you do. You see where I'm going? You see a pair of shoes. I love shoes. I always say to myself, do I need them shoes? Can I afford them shoes? Should I buy those shoes? Sometimes we do things that we shouldn't really do. That's the impulsive thing. All right? So it means that you're very good at managing yourself. We live in a society where everybody wants things instantly. And that's the impulsive thing gone wrong. Okay? They did an experiment in the 1970s with children with marshmallows. This was proven. You can look this up on the internet if you like. And they put a marshmallow in front of 4-year-olds. And they had researchers observe them. And the researcher went out of the room and left the marshmallow with the 4-year-old. And they said to the child, if you don't eat that marshmallow when I'm gone, when I come back, I'll give you another one. And some of the children sniffed the marshmallow, danced, walked away from it, but didn't eat it. Some of the children, the researcher hadn't even shut the door and they'd ate it. They couldn't help themselves. Now, the very interesting thing is they tracked those children for the next 30 years of their lives. And the children that were able to resist the marshmallow done substantially better at school, in life, work, everything. Whereas the children who ate the marshmallow didn't. They didn't do well because they didn't have this thing of impulse control. So they have proven that this is extremely important, that you're able to actively, cognitively wait when you need to wait. That you don't have to have everything straight away. And that's what impulse control is. That's part of being resilient. Okay? Empathy, we talked about this morning. I'll talk about it again. Empathy is this ability to get into someone else's shoes and understand their perspective. That is also a measure of resilience. Causal analysis. I think this was an extremely important one for the medical people. Causal analysis is the accuracy of your thinking. It's your ability to pinpoint the accurate causes of a problem. Causal analysis. Because if you diagnose the wrong cause, then you put the wrong solution in place. Okay? So causal analysis is around diagnosis, accurate diagnosis. Next one is what we call self-efficacy. These are the 7 competencies if you were being measured to be resilient. Self-efficacy is the sense you have of your own ability. I sometimes meet people who, and this one's very, very much linked to confidence. I meet people who think, I couldn't do that. No, I couldn't do that. And they don't believe that they have the ability. Those people I immediately know have what I call low self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is that true belief that you know if you put your mind to it, you're going to be able to do it. So it's that confidence in your ability. That's what that is. It's different from self-esteem. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. Self-efficacy is your sense of your own skill level, your mastery. Okay? So even if you don't know it, you know you'd be able to learn how to do it. You've the confidence in that piece. Okay? Next one is realistic optimism. Optimism is I told you optimism was part of resilience. And the last one is this reaching out, making opportunities. So if you were to be measured for resilience, these are the 7 things people would be looking for. Okay? And there are tests where you can actually get measured. All right? Now, I am specifically going to go down 2 routes today. I'm going to go down emotion regulation and I'm going to go down causal analysis in your thinking. Okay? Because it's a very wide subject and I've literally got 2.5 hours here. These are the skills, by the way, and I don't want to go through too much detail of these, but I really only want to mention that these first 3, and you can see why you can't really get away from thinking resilience. The first 3 is all about understanding how you think, what you believe, being very cognitively aware and analysing your thoughts. So these first 3 building blocks are the first 3 skills of building resilience. So you need to know your thinking, the ABC model, the adversity, the belief and the consequences, what thinking traps you have, and what beliefs you may be carrying around that don't help you. All right, and then we can move on to the higher skills, but I'm only going to go do these 3 today. Okay? So, let's go straight here to emotion regulation, which is one of the first skills. If you have high emotion regulation versus low emotion regulation, how does this affect you? And this slide clearly explains it. If you score high in being able to regulate your emotions, that means you will remain focused despite pressure and adversity hitting you in the face. You'll be able to express emotions in the right way to the right person at the right time. So no matter if someone's screaming in your face, you are very calm and in control. And you're also able to keep your emotions in check even if someone's pressing your buttons when you're discussing a difficult situation. Do you ever get into a situation where somebody's trying to tell you something and you really don't agree with them and you can just find yourself getting a little bit heated? That's somebody who's got high emotion regulation will be able to understand that and manage it as they're in the conversation. Low emotion regulation causes you to lose effectiveness when you're trying to diagnose and solve problems because you can't even think. Your emotions get in the way. You lose grace when you're communicating because you tend to scream and shout. I constantly laugh at these senior people in organisations who think that it's okay to scream and shout. It's not. It's absolutely not. You are anything but emotional intelligent, and you are anything but resilient. You cannot scream and shout if you're in a leadership position. You just can't. And high levels of stress, also it creates health issues. All right? I'm not saying, by the way, for a second that any of this is easy. And I'm not saying for a second, by the way, that you'll go out of this room and if you're resilient, you'll never scream again. I can tell you now, there's some situations that sometimes you have to breathe and breathe deeply. How many of you, and I know you do quite a bit of this, how many of you do yoga and meditation? And quite a few. Yeah, the more people that do yoga and meditation, I think this is massive for building resilience. I actually need to learn to do yoga better than I did. I went to Assam last year. I'm not going to tell you about my experience, but it wasn't good. And I didn't really master it. I need to go back again. The happiness program for me didn't work. I think I need to do it again. So I think I need to do it in smaller classes because there was about 15,000 in the class. And that might have affected my focus levels because I've never seen 15,000 in a training class in my life. But there you go. And a man with a microphone, like a little dot at the front of the room. So I need to do it again because I do believe in the faith of it, and I think I need to do it again. Just want to explain this other skill because this is a real important one for doctors, self-efficacy. That is the sense of your capability and your confidence in yourself. A person who's got high self-efficacy is they know they can do it. Okay, this is very important, I think, for the nurses who get challenged quite a lot by the doctors. They will reach out to help others solve their problem, and they'll take on complex problems with ease because they know that even if they can't do it all, they'll know someone who can do it, but they still believe that they have the ability to solve the problem. Low self-efficacy also leads to low self-esteem. You prefer to only do what you're told, routine tasks. You have a tendency to depend on someone else's ability rather than your own, and you doubt your own ability to solve problems. You can see where that will become very problematic for either a doctor or a nurse. And sometimes, and this is the danger of the society that you're in at the moment, sometimes, for example, if a doctor makes a genuine mistake, and sometimes we can make a mistake, no matter who you are, there's not a person in this room that hasn't made a mistake, and you get sued for that mistake, sometimes you can become fearful and your confidence can take a knock, and you may not do what you used to do because you fear being sued twice. That's whenever something has really attacked your ability, the sense of your ability, which is why this is very, very dangerous. You really need to be making sure that you analyse the reasons why things happened and not let it affect your self-efficacy. So, what I want to do here, I'm going to get straight into just testing this. I'm going to give you two things, and then we're going on to the emotional part. I'm going to put up a series of words. Do you know what an anagram is? There'll be a number of letters, and you have to make a word. There's only one word. Okay? I'm going to put up a series of letters here, and once this starts, there's to be no talking and no copying. Okay? So it's an anagram test. All right? Are you ready? So each of these words is an English word. You can only use the letters once. And as I say, once we start, I want absolute silence in the room, no copying and no speaking. And I will be watching. You ready? Here goes. You're supposed to make the word. Yeah. It's an anagram. It's a mixed up word. The letters are mixed up. You just unmix the words or the letters and make the word. You're only looking for one word. And there will be no further talking. You're not allowed to, you're not right. Okay, I'll go back to the beginning because once we start again, it spoils the test. We're not allowed to talk. Okay? This is an anagram activity. So if there are 6 letters all scrambled up, and it doesn't really make sense, you have to make the word. It's an English word. You use the letters only once. So if the 6 letters up there, you only can use 6 letters. You can't use an R twice or a G twice to make a different word. So you only use the letters once. Okay? Everybody clear before we start again? Because the minute we start, no talking. All right, here we go. Okay, pens down. Before you do anything, I want you to write down exactly the conversation that was going on in your head while you were trying to do that test. So what were you thinking inside your head? Write it down word for word what you were saying inside your head. What was the little conversation you were having with yourself as you were trying to do that exercise? It's important to write down the exact conversation that was running in between your ears when you were doing that exercise. And if you were feeling anything, what was the emotion? Were you feeling frustration? Were you feeling disappointment? Were you feeling happy? What were you feeling? Was there any emotion at all? Okay? Now, it was a test. How many words did you get? Somebody got 2. Which 2? No, pagoda was not a word. There's no A. You made up one there. There is no A in the pagoda, so there isn't. You can't have pagoda. Okay, let me be honest with you. It's the only time I'll ever do this to you. There only was one word that you could have made, and that was regale. The rest of them were pretend words. You couldn't make a word. So what I actually did, hold on a second, what I actually did was put you through a test where you intentionally were going to fail. What I want to know is, what do you think when you fail? I'm more interested in what you were thinking. So tell me now, what were you saying to yourself during that test? Okay, that's a me. All right. Anybody else? You're a me, by the way. I'm going to just go me. Tell me what you were thinking. Right. Okay, hold on a second. What you're actually doing is giving me an interpretation of what you were doing. I don't want interpretation. I want the exact conversation that you were saying to yourself. So, for example, go ahead. This is what we're after. So say exactly. I need to make words. Somehow I have to get over this. All right, you're definitely a me as well. Okay, so there's two me's identified straight away. I'll tell you where I'm going with this in a moment. Anybody else? Okay, so you love it, and then what else happened when you weren't getting the answers? You still was fun and challenge. Okay, that's fair enough. I still think you're me. What was that again? Keep on trying. Right. Was there anybody frustrated? Yes. Were you frustrated because I was going very fast as well? I kept moving quickly, yeah. Right. This is very interesting. You see, meals.
That's what I wrote.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very
So
interesting.
it would be so embarrassing when I will confront you or someone else that I didn't know even a single word.
Right. Right. Now we're getting to it. Let me tell you why. It's very, very interesting to get the difference between how males deal with failure and how females deal with failure. You still looked at this as a fun thing you do with your kids, no big deal, I'm not getting the words, it's still fun, right? He looks at it and he goes, if she asks me and I haven't got any, I'm going to be showed up and embarrassed in front of the whole room. Males don't do failure. They don't do failure, and they get angry when they fail more so than females. They just say, well, it's not that big a deal, and it was a bit of fun, and they can let it go easier. The ego gets in the way for the males. That's very interesting. It's very, very. Plus, you'll keep trying forever to get a word, whereas the female go, no, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered. They'll sit down. Any more people down the back?
Just that I thought you should have given more time.
Yes. Now, I intentionally go fast to make you angry. All right? Because I want to get you frustrated. And I want to see, now here's very interesting. Now here's a question I'm going to ask you. Were you frustrated at me, or were you frustrated at yourself because you weren't getting it? Now, you're also a me. Had you been frustrated at me, that was different. Was there anybody in the room cross at me? Were you cross at me? Yes. Do you want to know why? I seen that she was cross at me. She looked up at one stage when I flicked the next one and gave me a dirty look, and then looked back down at her. You did? Yeah. Because it had changed, she just looked over at me and gave me a dirty look, and then went back onto the paper again. So I knew she's cross at me, right? And that could be a not me. Right, let me tell you why I asked that and why I say one of the most important things about resilience is to understand how you mentally deal with failure. Because there will be times when things don't go to plan. And how you explain that to yourself is very important. Now, let me just go with this a second. There's a thing we do in thinking, and it's called explanatory style. Everybody needs to understand their explanatory style. And their explanatory style is how you explain adversity to yourself. And adversity could just be failing the test. Okay? Just what I did there now. I made you fail a test. So I put you through an adversity, and I want to know how some of you explain it to yourselves. And you explain it differently. Okay? So this explanatory style thing, there's four parts to it. It is only for negative situations. It's also habitual. You know the way we talked about some of your thinking being automatic? Your explanatory style is also automatic. Some of you will jump one way, some of you will jump another. Okay? You also get your explanatory style from your primary carer. So you normally get it from a parent. And by the way, it is formed and fixed by the time you're 9 years old. So whatever way you explain adversity to yourself, it's formed by the time you're 9, and you carry it for the rest of your life. So for any of you that are parents, this is extremely important, because you are actually passing on the thinking to your child, because they will take on your thinking in terms of this behavior. So let me explain this explanatory style thing. There are 3 aspects to it. Some of you during that anagram activity will have said, I'm not getting this. I must be stupid. I'm not making any words here. I'm not doing this quick enough. The minute you say, I'm not doing this, or I'm not getting this, or I at all, you explain adversity in the personal side. For those of you during that anagram activity that said, I don't know what she thinks she's doing, she's going too fast, this must be a game. These are not real words. You explained it, not me. You blame me. Some people blame other people when things don't go to plan. Some people blame themselves. So one of the first things you need to understand, do you explain yourself in the me or the not me? Okay? Second thing, some of you may have thought, you know what? I was never good at anagrams. So there's no point. So you will have explained that failure always as permanent. I was never any good at anagrams. Whereas some of you will explain it and go, well, I don't know what's going on here because normally I'm good at these. But I'm not getting this one. And that's a temporary explanation. So that's not always. And then the last part of your explanatory style, which is how you deal with adversity, some of you will have given up and set the pen down real quick and went, nah. School wasn't really my thing. I'm not good at this at all. No point. Can't do any of this. So you explain one mistake and you generalize it to everything. Whereas some other people will say, well, it was just this anagram activity, and if I keep focused on it, I'll sooner or later get it. Very, very important to understand these three aspects. One of the things that resilient people know, and they know very clearly, is they know what their explanatory style is. Now, let me tell you something now. Really, really important. And this is huge for depression, and it's huge for suicide. Let me give you this next bit first before we go back on that. This is probably the heaviest part of this afternoon, and then we'll get lighter. The me's will explain it like I've done something wrong. And your thinking in that situation, this is the personal bit, is not accurate. Because if you thought during that anagram activity, I must be stupid because you failed, were you correct in thinking that? The answer is no, because it was a cheated test. You never were going to pass it. It was a made-up test. So if you explained that you were stupid in that test, that was faulty thinking. And that was based on your explanatory style. So you need to be very careful that your thinking is accurate when things go wrong, because sometimes our habitual thinking takes us the wrong way. And resilience is all about accurate thinking and being flexible in your thinking. Okay? So if you thought, and I know that I'm a me. So for example, when something goes wrong, I think, oh my God, what have I done? Is this my fault? But because I know that, I go, well, maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it's something to do with what they're doing. So I actually mentally jump from me to not me, look at the options, and then make a decision. Because I know that I default to me. All right? So the trick here is to know what you are, and then flick to the other side, look at your options before you make a decision. Now here's another one, just for example here. Say you come into work tomorrow morning and there's an email on your system from your boss which says, immediately you get into the office, come and see me. What's your first thought? Huh? Anything else? What if it's an aggressive email? Get in here immediately. I need to see you right away. Now we're getting there. If your first thought is, what have I done, or I've done something wrong, you're definitely a me. If your first thought is, well, they must be looking at me to do something, you're a not me. So start to pay attention to what way you jump mentally to an explanation when you perceive a threat. Okay? Second one there, some people will come out of an interview And you'll hear them saying, I was never getting that job. The panel had already decided who was getting that job. That job was never mine. And that's a not me. Whereas somebody else will say, I hadn't my homework done here. You know what? I'm not getting that interview. I didn't do my homework. They blame themselves. But other people blame the panel because they've already decided. You hear this all the time. Some of you will say, I'm useless at anagrams. I was never any good at it. I'm just not good at I'm not good at that. And somebody else will have said, she's taking the mickey here, this must be some sort of trick. So you have to work out whether you're a me or not me. Very, very, very important aspect to resilience. When something goes wrong, do you see it as permanent or temporary? One of the most important aspects of all. Every time an adversity happens in your life, is it permanent or is it temporary? How do you explain it to yourself? It should be temporary, but sometimes people think things are going to last forever. Okay? Now, how you explain it and how you say it. Are you a type of person who uses what I call high-intensity language? This is a disaster. Or would you say this is a setback? Because a disaster has more emotional intensity to it and a setback has less. You need to be very careful how you communicate emotionally. Because disaster is big, setbacks small. Resilient people keep it small. My staff are lazy, very general, permanent. My staff have not been working hard lately, more temporary. I can't play golf, permanent. I can't play golf yet, temporary. See the difference? So one of the things that's very important here is this temporary thing in resilience. The last one, you know those people that everything or not everything. So for example, you don't do the anagram and all of a sudden it's not, I can't do this anagram, all of a sudden it becomes, I'm just stupid. So you went from not being able to do an anagram to everything and I'm just stupid. So you generalize. You need to be careful about that. Okay? When you hear people say, I mess up everything I do, or did you mess up just this project? He or she is difficult to get along with, or he or she is difficult to work with specifically on a team. Do not generalize. And because when you generalize, you lose perspective. And in resilience, you need to keep perspective. People can't be trusted, very general. He or she can't be trusted, it's more specific. Okay? Now here's the really bad news here. I'm going to say this again about this. If you are caught, the biggest trick in resilience is to be flexible in your thinking. So once you know you're a me, go, well, maybe it wasn't me. If you know you're an always, go, well, maybe this is temporary. You got to flick between the two. Most people don't. Most people stay stuck on one or two sides. For example, the people who take their own lives, suicide, or people who get chronically depression, these people think me, always, and everything. So when something happens that's wrong, they go, it's my fault. It's never going to change. What's the point? And they take themselves down the route of depression. So you need to be very, very careful, because the people on your staff, I have seen doctors taking their own lives in medical schools because they can't cope. This is massive to teach people in coping mechanisms, because it's just that their thinking's wrong. If someone can get to them quick enough, they can help them change their thinking. But as far as they're concerned, you know, they're going to fail their exams, they're not going to make the high expectations maybe that their parents wanted for them as a doctor, so what is the point in continuing? As opposed to just seeing this as one tiny little chapter in their life, they can do something different. So be very, very careful if you're caught in me, always, and everything as a thinking pattern when things go wrong. On the other side, by the way, not me, not always, not everything, that's equally bad, because you'll never take responsibility. It doesn't really matter, because it's all temporary anyway. That's not good either. The trick is to be flexible. That is the biggest lesson I want you to take away today in terms of flexibility of your thinking. Any questions on that? So please think about your thinking. Start checking how you think under pressure. Do not automatically jump to the negative. If your thoughts race, slow them down. And don't get stuck in why. Pessimists get stuck in why. Optimists go, what next? So when people are going, why did this happen? Why? Say, okay, why did it happen? That's fair enough. But now what are we going to do? Move them on. Move yourself on. So why? What next? Why? What next? Mentally, don't get stuck. Okay? Switch your attention. I'm not dealing with that now. I'm going to deal with this. Not going to worry about that. I'm going to deal with this now. So you've got to have this on-off switch. You need it in medicine. Get perspective. Is this a big problem? Is it a small problem? Is it going to be bigger tomorrow or is it going to be smaller tomorrow? Where is it in the context of life? Keep perspective. That's huge. It should be small, but it's huge to keep perspective. Move past why and get planning for what next. People who take, particularly the Greens, for anybody who was in the room this morning, the Greens always need to have control or they get very anxious. So always focus on what you can believe, what you can control, and take action on that. And then you will feel better and you'll feel more in control. Because resilience and being out of control, those two things don't correlate. Okay, the definition of resilience, remember, is to be in problem-solving mode for as long as possible and as long as necessary, and to see what you can control and what you cannot control. So the resilient person is always going to have a very firm grasp of what they can do and move to action. Any questions on that? Yep. When things are getting out of control, you know, one of the things that I do straight away, again, you have to take, I always say I take a step back. When things get out of control, one of the things I notice is that I start to speak a lot faster and my voice starts to go up and I start to shout and it's not good. So I've got some physical signs. I just come back. That's fine. This is going to be an interesting class. Bearing in mind what we did this morning. This morning's stuff was very much on thinking and mental modes. What I also want to cover, resilience is about thinking as well, by the way. But I'm also going to cover the emotional aspects because some of that came up this morning with breaking bad news, etc. So I've slightly shifted the emphasis of where I'm going to go this evening. All right. However, you can't really deal with resilience without talking a little bit about how you think. Okay? So, let's get started here to begin with. Part of resilience as well, by the way, is all to do with optimism and mindset. One of the competencies of being resilient is that you actually have what we call realistic optimism. And why is this important in medicine? Well, again, I will just say there's far too many cases of litigation. The stress levels have never ever been as high as they ever have been in medicine, and particularly in India. So I think that resilience is becoming a very, very important skill for everybody that works in medicine, whether you be a doctor, a nurse, or even a healthcare professional. So, are you optimistic? Have you got a personality that sees the opportunity as opposed to the threat? Are you a person that sees the good thing, or are you a person that sees the bad thing? Because one of the things about being resilient is that you think of things in a particular way. And as I said, realistic optimism is part of resilience. So let's see whether or not you think you're an optimist. All right? And just explain this little bit about anticipation. Let's do this little exercise with you. Imagine getting a kiss from your favourite celebrity. How much would you pay to get it immediately? How much would you pay if you were going to get it in one day? What about 3 days? What about if you weren't going to get it for a year?